Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I'm going to do a presentation, a lot of information about what really happened at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in 2019. A lot of new documents were released in the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which was the stuff that came out 3.5 million documents in late 2025, early 2026. The most recent was, I think it was January 30th. It's hard to believe how long it's been. But there's a lot of information that's come out, a lot of pictures that weren't seen by the public. And I just want to go over them just for the record, because I think it shows a different story. What we were told is that we know Jeffrey Epstein was arrested in Teterboro Airport July 8th, 2019, after a grand jury came back with I think a sealed indictment or unsealed indictment. I'll go through that. The attorney at the time was Joffrey Berman. And if you remember, there was a presentation explaining what happened and why he was arrested. And it was basically he was charged with sex trafficking of minors. We know much more right now, too. There's so much more information in the Epstein files about his trafficking and tons of pictures. I can do a show just on the picture files that I have that are extraordinary. There's tens of thousands of pictures, and show victim after victim after victim. And it shows Congress kind of slipping and not doing their homework at all, because there's so many people around who had to have seen the trafficking. And some of the victims have even said that as well, that like everybody knew. And so anyway, Epstein was taken to the MCC on the 8th. And this is kind of there's so many other famous people who were in there. I think some drug dealers from El Chapo was in there at one point. A lot of other people associated with the mob were in there, which I'll show. I'll show some of these videos of two guys, Elite and Francis, who both believe that Epstein was killed. And people are being deceptive about what happened at the MCC. And there's actually stories in the Epstein files of people being switched out. Some of the guards have been, under the in focus, I guess is a way to put it. So I think that that's an important thing, and I have it in my presentation. But there's a lot to go through. I have thousands of documents just on the MCC, and then he supposedly died. I think it was August 10th. But there was also the intervening time was him a supposed suicide attempt on. We were told it was a suicide attempt on July 23rd of 2019. And even that doesn't really bear out, believe it or not. It's there's a lot more to that story. He was bunked with this guy Tartaglione, who will go through, who was convicted. The conviction of Tartaglione took place fairly recently, within the last couple of years. Like his whole thing was kind of dragging. It was did not seem to get a speedy criminal trial, and I think I'll show that in this. He also had a co-conspirator, or somebody who got arrested with him, who got a 10-year sentence. I'll show that in these files. But I don't know how much, this is like the unsealed indictment. This is the first document. It's literally from the DOJ that, work with several. I mean, this is the whole thing. This is part of the cover. I can do a whole nother show on the cover up. But he's working with they literally state in this document, Epstein allegedly worked with several employees and associates to ensure they had a steady supply of minor victims to abuse, and paid several of those victims themselves to recruit other underage girls to engage in similar sex acts for money. So they're even saying this in the thing. And then later on, we'll find out, hey, nobody else is getting arrested, right? It's just Jeff and Ghislaine Maxwell. And it's kind of confusing because there is a Richard Berman, so Joffrey Berman. Even the story of Joffrey Berman's interesting, because he would be fired in 2020 and let go all the way. I mean, it was William Barr or Bill Barr, but really it's the Trump administration who got rid of him. And these files also show that Joffrey Berman was working on they put out like a substantial work product and I can probably pull that up on another file, but a substantial work product looking into other co-conspirators and corporate co-conspirators. This is early 2020, so not that long after this, within 6 months or 7 months. And those documents are now in the public domain, like they are now, because Congress allowed this. They have all been released, and some are very heavily redacted. And they're still talking about the redactions and like they fired Bondi, or Trump fired Bondi. Today's April 14th, 2026. Bondi was fired, but even this guy Blanche, who was the assistant AG, is saying, like, we're not going to release any more, but the redactions are off the charts, and they're clearly, in my opinion, it's not even my opinion, they're clearly covering up for other co-conspirators. They're not just covering up the victims. And some of the victims, I mean, have stated, I'll have to find that too, but they said, just put my name out there. They're already public. So they're not, like, the whole notion that they're covering up these victims is hogwash. It's just so much baloney surrounding these files. If the victims don't mind, and a lot of them are public. So, but if you remember, there was that kind of famous press conference with Joffrey Berman. He's pointing at these files and things like that. But basically, he said, as alleged, Jeffrey Epstein abused underage girls for years, operating a scheme which girls he victimized would recruit others for Epstein to exploit and abuse. Epstein exploited girls who were vulnerable to abuse, enticed them with cash payments, and escalated his conduct to include sex acts often occurring in his residence on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. That's the mansion on 71st Street. While the charged conduct is from a number of years ago, so they charged him between 2002 and 2005. The victims, then children and now young women, are no less entitled to their day in court. My office is proud to stand up for these victims by bringing this indictment. And then the assistant director, William Sweeney. We are asking anybody who've been victimized by Jeffrey Epstein to call information. This is so important because all these files, we never saw the files in the public, the NSOC files, the intake files. And now that all these things have been added to it's a huge cover up, Diana. Now that the documents have been released, we know that people called this up. So William Sweeney saying, we're asking anyone who have been victimized by Jeffrey Epstein, anyone who have information about his alleged criminal behavior, to please call us. The number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. There's thousands and thousands of these documents, and a lot of they show, and people are like, criticize them. Oh, they never followed up. Well, that's the problem. They never followed up because these people are giving, and also, I think they're called 203s, and there's other documents in there. But if people call the FBI and provide false information, they can literally be subject to criminal prosecution. They can have 5-year sentence or something like that. And this one of these, like the chat is saying, like, oh, these things don't match. There's stories about Epstein and his surgeries and stuff like that, but a lot of these medical examiners are shady as heck. Hey, Bart. And also, these pictures are very telling. So you'll see some pictures in here I don't think the public has seen before the Epstein Files Transparency Act. But this is a huge cover-up. We want to hear from you, regardless of the age you are now, whatever age you are in, no matter what the incident took place. The bravery it takes to call us might empower others to speak out about the crimes committed against them. See, that's the other thing, is people were afraid to talk. They were intimidated. They were harassed. And a lot of the harassment went back to 2006, 2007. If you were a victim back then and you saw the harassment that took place, or heard of it, or may have heard it through the grapevine, why would you come forward? In the eyes of the FBI, the victims will always come first. This isn't the case. It hasn't played out in reality since 2019. I'm sorry. NYPD Commissioner James P. O'Neill. Today's charges serve as a warning to individuals who continue to prey upon some of our society's most vulnerable population. We are coming for you. Yeah. So anyway, if you believe you are a victim of the sexual abuse perpetrated by Jeffrey Epstein, please contact the FBI and reference this case. There were so many calls. I'll do another show on all those files. I can do episode after episode. Like, I don't know how much time it'll take me to get through all this. I may have to break it up in certain sequences. This document itself is thousands of pages. Like, it's not a joke. They use the word network. I would call it a network. Some people call it the Epstein class. I don't think that's accurate. I think it really is a network. Not all the people are involved in this, but I think that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people who were associated with Epstein who knew, who should be subpoenaed, questioned. I think they're still going on. But the massages they're talking about here to further enable him to abuse underage girls. Epstein asked and enticed certain of his victims to recruit additional minor girls, so it was like a multi-level marketing scheme. But massages was a euphemism for him for sex act of some sort. He was 66 at the time. And some of these things that came into the FBI say he was trafficking for 40 years. Think about it. He started in his mid to late 20s. It's really pretty outrageous. So that's the first document. This is an interesting document too, because came out. This is the FBI document from, I believe it was March of 2025. And I'll read it in total because it just shows that it just indicates the cover up and also what they believe that what happened at the MCC, which is the title of this presentation I'm giving, is that they believe that he committed suicide. And I think there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. And I'll show that to you. I'll show you the pictures and what happened. There's allegations of being switched out. But I believe this was done in June of 2025. What they say also, they admit that there's a huge amount of people involved in this Epstein case that I don't know it's covered in the mainstream media. I don't listen to the mainstream media. So I don't know how much they cover, but here we go. U.S. Department of Justice, the FBI is underneath, the DOJ. As part of our commitment to transparency, total joke. And you can remember the March binder event, that featured all these influencers that came out of the White House, and they held those white binders, and it was already stuff that had been redacted and already had been associated with the Maxwell stuff. It wasn't anything to do with the EFTA, which is the acronym for the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which is a very short act, by the way. It's like one page. Congress, not unsurprisingly, did a lousy job on what they wanted to see and what they wanted to see. I think they didn't understand what the contours or what the totality of all the information that was put together. So they wrote, in my opinion, that EFTA Act kind of flying blind. Like they didn't know. They had this kind of fixation on the list, which you'll see in this document. But the client list, there is a client list. The EFTA legislation that was passed by Congress required a list to be put together, and there is one, but it's not even the list that's most important. It's the network and all that was going on around that. That was going on around Epstein is really much more important than the specific list that people want to fixate on. As part of our commitment to transparency, the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have conducted an exhaustive review of investigative holdings relating to Jeffrey Epstein. To ensure that the review was thorough, the FBI conducted digital searches of its databases, hard drives, and network drives, as well as physical searches of squad areas, locked cabinets, desks, closets, and other areas where responsive material may have been stored. These searches uncovered a significant amount of material, including more than 300 gigabytes of data and physical evidence. The files relating to Epstein include a large volume of images of Epstein, images and videos of victims who were either minors or appear to be minors, and over 10,000 downloaded videos and images of illegal child sex abuse material and other pornography. Teams of agents, analysts, attorneys, and privacy and civil liberties experts comb through the digital and documentary evidence with the aim of providing as much information as possible to the public while simultaneously protecting victims. See, this was already going on before the EFTA, which I believe passed in November of 2025. So this was already ongoing. So the thing that, if you remember, just like the Epstein information was such a part uh, of Trump's campaign. Like, oh yeah, we're going to release that. He said it all the time on these podcasts, and it was bandied about what was in there. So it's all very important, and it really is important. Like anybody who downplays this stuff is just lying to you. Much of the material is subject to court-ordered sealing. Only a fraction of this material would have been aired publicly had Epstein gone to trial, as the seal served only to protect victims and did not expose any additional third parties to allegations of illegal wrongdoing. Through this review, we found no basis to revisit the disclosure of those materials and will not permit the release of child pornography. This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. They talk about blackmail in these files, guys. And I don't think he would put in writing something that would make him, you know, there would be something that would allow criminal acts to be, criminal exposure to him in writing. I don't know if he was that dull, that much of a dullard, but there are like little threats and little hints that something was going on in these files. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. Consistent with prior disclosures, this review confirmed that Epstein harmed over 1,000 victims. Wow, so we had 1,000 victims at least. Each suffered unique trauma. Sensitive information relating to these victims is intertwined throughout the materials. This includes specific details such as victim names, likenesses, physical descriptions, places of birth, associates, and employment history. One of our highest priorities is combating child exploitation and bringing justice to victims. Perpetuating unfounded theories about Epstein serves neither of those ends. Okay, what are those unfound theories? To that end, while we have labored to provide the public with maximum information regarding Epstein and ensured examination of any evidence in the government's possession, it is the determination of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. After a thorough investigation, the FBI investigators concluded that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC, in New York City on August 10th, 2019. The conclusion is consistent with previous findings, including the August 19th, 2019 autopsy findings of the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, the November 2019 position of the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Southern District of New York in connection with the investigation of federal correctional officers responsible for guarding Epstein, and the June 2023 conclusions of the DOJ's Office of Inspector General. The conclusion that Epstein died by suicide is further supported by video footage from the common area of the Special Housing Unit, the SHU, where Epstein was housed at the time of his death. As DOJ's Inspector General explained in 2023, anyone entering or attempting to enter the tier where Epstein's cell was located from the SHU common area would have been captured by this footage. The FBI's independent review of this footage confirmed that from the time Epstein was locked in the cell at around 10:40 on August 9th, 2019, until around 6:30 a.m. the next morning, nobody entered any of the tiers of the SHU. Well, there's other things that the proper cameras weren't working. Like they show it in this. I actually show it. During this review, the FBI enhanced the relevant footage by increasing its contrast, balancing the color, and improving its sharpness for greater clarity and reviewability. The full, raw, and enhanced videos are available at the following links. And if you go to these following links, they're like actually kind of funny because one of the views isn't even towards his cell. Like I'll show you in the documents exactly where his cell is. And these camera angles aren't that angle. So they're deliberately obfuscating this case. And people have stared at this wrong angle of the video for 10 hours. Like, this isn't even the right angle. The DOJ, the US Department of Justice, and the FBI in this document failed or either deliberately obfuscated the proper angle that faced Jeffrey Epstein's cell. Okay. There's just absolutely no question about it. They actually took an oblique video footage, and to me, it led to a deliberate deception upon the public. Like, I'm really not kidding. Like, I'm not joking. Like, they literally deceived the public about the angle. Bart, would you say the EFTA docs were part of an active FBI agent? Well, there's information coming up into the EFTA docs, I think up until 2025. So I think that there were certain things that were going in there. There's miscellaneous docs, civil litigation docs, but a lot of the stuff was put together, in these other investigations, and so much goes back. Like, things go back to 2000. Well, the emails are really the gold mine of everything, which a lot of them have the pictures taken out of them or removed, but they there was just tons of data from a variety of different sources, and I think that was just explained in this document, that they had a wide variety of different types of documents. But the last kind of relevant emails led up to when he was arrested in July 2019. But there's also like investigative files. There's the Berman investigative files I've just mentioned. There are civil litigation files after his death. There are things pertaining to Maxwell and her case, her criminal case. But this is kind of one of the more interesting documents right here, is the New York Field Office death investigation. You can see these EFTA numbers. It's EFTA 001614494. If people don't know what that is, that's called a Bates number. They use it in litigation with like tons of documents like this. And this is like the interior stuff that they did after his arrest. And I mean, I think this is very telling. Some people could say that these are faked or they are part of the cover up of him getting out. A lot of these pictures that people put out are obvious AI. Like, oh, this is Jeff in Israel. Um yeah, it's just ridiculous. I don't think they can leave him out. I think they did to him what they did to Brunel, which was the same thing. He got arrested in France. And the official narratives are fake. I mean, I don't think, and I'm lay out my case for the death of Jeffrey Epstein, and the autopsy's correct, and the, some of this other stuff. But I think the timelines are important. So, I mean, I kind of repeated it on the intro, but July 6th, I'm sorry, he was arrested on July 6th, and then the charges were things. He was taken to the MCC on July 8th. A psych eval was done, which I'll show you. On the 9th, he was put in MCC with cellmate Nicholas Tartaglione. On the 23rd, Epstein's first, even this, like this, they call it a suicide attempt, but I think I'll show it's something different. They put him on suicide watch, then they take him off suicide watch. He's saying the whole time, I'm not suicidal. Then on August 10th, his cellmate leaves, but he gets a new cellmate that's almost never mentioned, and I'll show his name. Then he supposedly commits suicide on the 10th, and it's announced dead. I think the 10th was like a Sunday morning or something like that. I think it was a weekend morning. And it's just a kind of a strange day, like he didn't do it during the week or something. Trying to remember what that date was. Anyway, let's see. It was a Saturday morning. Yeah, that's right. The 10th was a Saturday. So he's brought in, admitted to MCC 7-6. So it's kind of differential. There's different dates even of above. He's assigned. Okay, so this is important. He's assigned to House E, range 6, bed 547. Then he's taken to SHU. So he's in this secure housing unit. And I'll show exactly where his his cell was. On the 8th, he undergoes a psychological intake screening. He reported no suicidal ideation or attempts and denied any mental health symptoms or treatment. He did take a lot of drugs. I'll show those. Yeah, I mean, as a kind of older guy, that's not uncommon. Chief psychologist consulted with doctor from central office regarding Epstein. Given Epstein's risk factors for suicidality, including a high-profile case with media attention, sex offense charges, pre-trial status, and a court proceeding today, which would potentially be giving him bad news regarding his legal situation, staff and lieutenants were instructed to notify the on-call psychologist and place inmate Epstein on a watch status until psychology can conduct a thorough suicide risk assessment. So he's then psychologically observed on the 7-8. Chief psychologist conducted on the 7-9. Chief psychologist conducted a suicide risk assessment. Epstein again denied any suicidality and had no mental health or suicide history. And they doesn't show any mental health problems in all of his emails, which I don't, I find that interesting. He also didn't drink or smoke. He will be seen daily while on psychological observation, will be seen for a follow-up session once he was released. He then is assigned Tartaglione on the 10th. On the 11th, chief psychologist saw Epstein for psychological observation contact. He denied suicidality and did not appear to be in any distress at this time. He may have been thinking that he was going to get out of it, just like he got out of the last one back in 2007. And then 723, this is the so-called first suicide attempt. Call for assistance this is at 127. Call for assistance initiated by control center. Arriving officer was told Epstein had attempted suicide. An officer observed Epstein laying in the fetal position on the floor of his cell, snoring. His neck was red with no abrasions. Epstein was placed on the stretcher and appeared to open eyes to watch staff, then quickly shut them. Placed on suicide watch. Epstein told the officer that Tartaglione's cellmate had tried to kill him and had been harassing him. Tartaglione claimed he had been asleep and woke up to see Epstein with a string around his neck. Officer assessed transporting Epstein to suicide watch. Epstein initiated on suicide watch. It's also sketchy. Same day, psych conducted a suicide risk assessment. Epstein denied remembering how he ended up on suicide watch and denied current suicidal thoughts or ideation. It was unclear at this time if he had placed the string around his neck or somewhere else did. He was deemed a moderate risk of suicide, so he didn't even know. He didn't have any suicidal ideation. The next day, the jail takes him off of suicide watch. He was watched for 31 hours, 5 minutes. I think that the suicide watch records are in here, so they're watching him like every half hour. Psych conducted a post-suicide watch report. Epstein again denied suicidality and stated, "I have no interest in killing myself," and that it would be crazy to take his life, although he was worth $550 million. And although he was depressed and unhappy about his current legal situation, he was told he will remain on psychological observation in the near term. 2 days after the so then the public was told during this time he tried to commit suicide. That's what we were told. All this inside information was not divulged. It wasn't accessible. Clinical contact. Epstein asserted that he did not recall how he got the marks on his neck and complained about the conditions in the SHU. He denied suicidality again, and he said that he was too vested in my case to fight it. I have a life, and I want to go back to living my life. Epstein would remain on psychological observation out of an abundance of caution, given that he had yet to give an account at how he got the marks on his neck. He didn't know. The next day after that, 726, clinical contact. Epstein denied suicidal ideation, intention, or plan, and referred to himself as a coward, and "I'm Jewish," and said that he was not someone who liked pain or would ever attempt to harm himself. He keeps denying being suicidal. The next day, Epstein said he could not remember what happened in SHU. He denied suicidal ideation and said, "I'm a coward." He would remain on psych observation in an abundance of caution pending housing arrangements to be made on Monday. The next day, clinical contact. He just keeps denying, "I'm not suicidal." He keeps saying, "I'm not suicidal." Epstein complained about noises and conditions in his cell. He denied suicidal ideation. 729, clinical contact. Epstein asked to remain in the hospital unit for one more week where it was safe. So he wanted to stay safe. He felt unsafe. He would stay for one more night to receive his CPAP and get a good night's sleep, but that he would be returned to SHU tomorrow. There was no mental health issues precluding him from returning to the special housing unit, and we could not house him in the hospital area because he felt safe or more comfortable for him. So then he's sent back to another place. He's assigned to House Z, range 4, bed 206. Clinical contact, 730. Again, Epstein denied suicidal ideations and does not appear to be an immediate sign of danger to self. Psych observation was discontinued, 731. Again, Epstein denied suicidal ideation. August 1st. This is really a tell. Suicide risk assessment. They're asking him every day. Staff reported that when Epstein came back from court, so he'd gone to court, the USM asked him to sign a form that noted he had suicidal tendencies. So they're saying, "We think you have suicidal tendencies. Sign this form." He was seen for a suicide risk assessment. Epstein seemed surprised that there was a form noting suicidal tendencies. He denied again he was suicidal. He denied any suicidal tendencies, and suicidal watch was not indicated. So they tried to get him to sign a document saying he had suicidal tendencies before the event of 8/10. 8/9, Epstein departs for court. Southern District of New York. He also arrives for attorney conference, so he's talking to his attorney's Weingard, I think is Weingard. Officer said Epstein's cellmate was going to WAB and possibly may not return, so Epstein would need a cellmate upon arrival from his attorney visit. So Tartaglione gets taken out the day before he dies. Epstein departs attorney conference and returns to the special housing unit. Late at night, 7:17, Epstein places an approximately 20-minute call. Officer 1 allowed him to make the call in the shower area and dialed the number on a legal line because Epstein did not have his PAC and PIN set up. Officer 1 left Officer 2 and another male officer with Epstein. 12 o'clock. 2 and 3 start their shift supervised, both working overtime. They work until 8 a.m. and are replaced by 2 officers. 12:35. Fernandez and Drysdale, log completed. Good verbal count announced, 12:36. 3:06, 2 and 3 certified there are 72 inmates present. 5 o'clock, Officer 2 and 3 certified there are 72 inmates present for official count. 5:30, lieutenant arrives and relieves the lieutenant. 6:33, I think this is the morning. Body alarm activated in SHU. Officer 2 announced by radio a medical emergency on 9 South. Lieutenant arrived on 9 South and waited to control to buzz him in. He saw Officer 1, this is the morning again, who said Epstein hung himself. When Lieutenant arrived at the cell, Officer 3 was performing CPR on Epstein. Lieutenant 6:35, Lieutenant notified Control Center to call emergency services. During this situation, Officer 2 stated we did not complete the 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. rounds. Officer 3 appeared distraught and said, "We messed up. I messed up. She's not to blame. We didn't do any rounds." 6:43, Epstein is moved to the second floor medical area. Nurse performed CPR until EMT staff arrived. No pulse found. 7:10, Epstein is transferred into an ambulance with the officer and followed by another officer to Beekman Hospital. 7:36, official time of death as reported by ER physician. Later that day, Epstein's body released to Office of Chief Medical Examiner. Office of Chief Medical Examiner transports remains from New York Presbyterian to City Morgue. Officer blank accompanies the remains. And that day, well, the day after, performed an autopsy, and then the officers are indicted. But you see on this one, you can see the cameras. Let me see if I can enlarge this. But the most common camera site that you're seeing is this shot that comes across this staircase. I don't know if you can see, people can see my mouse thing, but it goes in a kind of southeasterly direction. But Epstein's cell is down a straight corridor, and they're really close to the guard station, actually. But it's the first cell on the right here. It says Epstein cell 220. So when you see this kind of like video, it's all fake. It's not that angle of the cameras, guys. It's just not it. So these cameras aren't even pointing in the right direction. So you can see like you have to go up these stairs right here on the right to get up to the cell block that's separated. It's a special housing unit within the MCC. So he's in the MCC, but in something even more set apart. And so this is the angle that you should see for his jail cell, this kind of yellow police tape. That's it. You go through the gate and it's the first cell on the right. It's not shown. So these are the pictures of, let me see if I can enlarge this. These are the pictures of Jeff dead. They're working on him. These are consistent with other pictures I've seen of him, kind of the hair and stuff. There's not a lot of pictures of him with his shirt off, but there are some of him, like you see his forearms and things like that. But this is an interesting pic here on the bottom right, taken at 6:33. It's interesting that these actually somebody's there to take pictures that early in the morning, like of this incident, like it's timed. But you can see that they've done some work on him and that he has pretty serious scar around his neck, like something has gone into his neck. See the remnants of one of his tattoos on his left arm. There are pictures of him, and I guess that photographs taken outside of hospital. I guess the incident is 6:33 in the morning, but this is done after him. They have pictures of his cell. Like, what's all these? Why are there so many rags and things around? This is supposedly what killed him. Final diagnosis. They call it a suicide hanging. This is signed off by somebody there. Her name is New York City Office Chief Medical Examiner Ivelis Matias, 8/28/19. Ligature further net, petechial hemorrhages, bilateral palebra, plethora of face and head with petechial hemorrhages of face, fractures of bilateral thyroid cartilage, corneae, left hyoid cornea with accompanying soft tissue hemorrhages. Resuscitation attempted, abrasions on left forearm that's mentioned and seen in the pictures. He said he had kind of hypertensive and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, hepatic steatosis, whatever that means, remote appendectomy. So he'd had an appendectomy, but this doesn't mention this other so-called surgery that he had on his what do you call it? Anyway, this is like the OCME stuff. Let's see. Both thyroid cartilage community are fractured, and you see this. So this is consistent with somebody being strangled. Is these hyoid bones being broken? So you see these are two thyroid cartilage and the hyoid bones. So you see this right here on the right. So Takes a lot of pressure. Usually one of the gives of strangulation is this broken bone. Background: on 12th August 2019, Forensic Anthropology Unit received a hyoid and larynx that were removed by Dr. Kristen Roman during the autopsy of 66-year-old male and submitted for trauma analysis. The hyoid was cleaned in warm water in combination of sodium bicarbonate and enzyme detergent. The larynx was placed in formalin, and the soft tissues of the thyoid and cricoid were manually removed to facilitate examination. Specimens were examined radiographically, macroscopically, and microscopically. Findings: hyoid. The greater horns of the hyoid are bilaterally fused to hyoid body. There's a fracture on the left greater horn. So here is the investigation and review of the prison's custody care that came out for the MCC, came out in June 2023. This is a very detailed document and long, but it's in this it's in the Epstein files. So there's a lot there. Let's see. I'll just read some of the intro stuff, but you can find this. I mean, here's the EFTAs right here. Let's see. EFTA 000390025 or 39025. This is a separate document than this one. This is the ending of it. But I think that one of these other doctors reviewed this and said it was consistent with strangulation, not suicide. And you can see the depth of how deep this went into his neck here. It shows bruising and stuff like that. His face is very red too. Let's see. Introduction and background. According to its website, Federal Bureau of Prisons' current mission statement is corrections professionals who foster a humane and secure environment and ensure public safety by preparing individuals for successful reentry into our communities. However, the Department of Justice Office of the Inspector General has repeatedly identified long-standing operational challenges that negatively affects the BOP's ability to operate its institutions safely and securely. Many of these same operational challenges, including staffing shortages, managing inmates at risk for suicide, functional security camera systems, and management failures, and widespread disregard of BOP policies and procedures, were again identified by the OIG during this investigation and review into the custody care and supervision of one of the BOP's most notorious inmates, Jeffrey Epstein. Like, they knew he was a notorious inmate. The OIG initiated this investigation upon receipt of information from the BOP that on August 10th, 2019, in the MCC in New York, Epstein was found hanged in his assigned cell within the Special Housing Unit. The Office of the Chief Medical Examiner of New York City determined Epstein had died by suicide. The OIG conducted this investigation jointly with the FBI and with the OIG's investigative focus being the conduct of BOP personnel. Among other things, the FBI investigated the cause of Epstein's death and determined there was no criminality pertaining to how Epstein had died. The report concerns the OIG's findings regarding MCC New York personnel's custody care and supervision of Epstein while detained at the facility from his arrest on federal sex trafficking charges on July 6th till his death on August 10th, excuse me. So there he is. And then there's they mentioned the incident in 23rd, which I think was an attempt. I'll show that I think that was an attempt to kill him by Tartaglione. Incident involving Epstein on July 23rd. While in MCC New York, Epstein was screened on numerous occasions by psychological staff, including formal suicide assessment on July 9th. In the evaluations, he denied having thoughts or a history of attempted suicide. Psychological staff determined Epstein did not meet the criteria for a psychological diagnosis. On July 23rd at 1:27 a.m., correctional officers responded to Epstein's SHU cell, where they found Epstein with an orange cloth around his neck. Epstein's cellmate, they don't mention his name, Tartaglione, told officers Epstein tried to hang himself. Medical staff examined Epstein, observed friction marks and superficial reddening around his neck and on his knee. and placed him on suicide watch. BOP policy requires that inmates identified as suicide risk be placed on suicide watch until no longer an imminent risk. The BOP uses a less restrictive monitoring form, psychological observation for inmates who are stabilizing but not yet ready to return to a housing unit. Epstein was removed from suicide watch on July 24th and remained under psychological observation until July 30th. Epstein first told MCC New York staff he thought his cellmate had tried to kill him, but later said he did not know what occurred and did not want to talk about how he had sustained his injuries. This is not consistent with suicide. Epstein also later asked if he could be housed with the same cellmate. Another inmate housed on the same SHU tier told the OIG that he heard Epstein's cellmate call for assistance, and that Epstein's cellmate told him that Epstein tried to hang himself from the bunk bed ladder. So the proof of this suicide didn't come from Epstein. It came from his cellmate. These are huge tells, guys. It's from somebody other than Epstein. Disciplinary charges against Epstein for alleged self-mutilation were not sustained due to insufficient evidence. There's no evidence. So they didn't even say, like, charge him for some kind of self-mutilation thing. By their own admission in this analysis. Following the July 23rd incident, the psychology department determined Epstein needed to be housed with an appropriate cellmate. And on July 30th, it sent an email to over 70 MCC New York employees informing them of this requirement. So they were trying to get him out of that cellmate. Warden at the time told the OIG selected a new cellmate for Epstein in consultation with BOP executive leadership. That inmate remained Epstein's cellmate. So Tartaglione was with him till August 9th. Then he gets switched out and then he dies. Like, wow. Like that's suspicious as heck. Holy smokes. This is from their own. And then like limited video evidence. This is all like stuff that happens. Like, oh, it just wasn't working. I'll go through this. Events of August 8th to 10th. On August 8th, U.S. Marshal Service sent 2 emails notifying numerous MCC New York staff that Epstein's cellmate was being transferred to another facility on August 9th. However, no action was taken to ensure Epstein was assigned another cellmate. Also on August 8th, Epstein met with his attorneys at the prison, as he had on prior occasions, and signed a new last will and testament. MCC New York official did not learn about the new will until after Epstein's death. This is also strange. So they admit to this. The following day, August 9th, that was a Friday, Epstein's cellmate was transferred to another facility and was not assigned a new cellmate. Additionally, on that date, the U.S. Court of Appeals on the Second Circuit unsealed approximately 2,000 pages of documents in civil litigation involving Ghislaine Maxwell, who was later convicted in December 2021 of conspiring with Epstein to sexually abuse minors over the course of a decade. The documents contain substantial derogatory information about Epstein, and there's extensive media coverage of information in the unsealed documents. On August 9th, after meeting at the prison with his lawyers, MCC New York staff allowed Epstein to make, in violation of BOP policy, an unrecorded, unmonitored telephone call before he was returned to his SHU cell. Although Epstein said he was calling his mother, in actuality, he called someone with whom he allegedly had a personal relationship. At approximately 8 p.m. on August 9th, SHU inmates were locked in their cells for the night, including Epstein, who was without a cellmate. A search of Epstein's cell following his death, so he wasn't with the cellmate at that night, according to them. But there's I'll show this other evidence that he was supposedly with one, so there's some contradiction there. A search of Epstein's cell following his death revealed Epstein had excess prison blankets, linens, and clothing in his cell, and that some had been ripped to create nooses. Only one SHU cell search was documented on August 9th, and it was not of Epstein's cell. So they searched something, but it wasn't his cell. BOP records did not indicate when Epstein's cell was last searched. The OIG also found that SHU staff did not conduct any 30-minute rounds for about 10:40 on August 9th, and that none of the required SHU counts were conducted after 4 p.m. on August 9th. Count slips and round sheets were falsified to show that they had been performed. So they got caught falsifying the performance of these things. So somebody was lying. On August 10th at approximately 6:30 a.m., the two SHU staff, Tova Noel and material handler Michael Thomas, began delivering breakfast to SHU inmates. Noel unlocked the door to Epstein's SHU tier. When Thomas attempted to deliver breakfast to Epstein through the food slot, through the food slot in his locked cell door, Epstein did not respond to Thomas's verbal commands. Thomas unlocked the cell door and saw Epstein hanged. Thomas immediately yelled for Noel to get help and call for a medical emergency. Thomas told the OIG that when he entered Epstein's cell, Epstein had an orange string, presumably from a sheet or a shirt, around his neck that was tied to the top portion of the bunk bed. Epstein was suspended from the top bunk in a near-seated position with his buttocks approximately 1 to 1.5 inches off the floor. Thomas said he immediately ripped the orange string from the bunk bed and Epstein's buttocks dropped to the ground. Thomas then lowered Epstein's body to the floor and began chest compressions until responding MCC New York staff members arrived approximately 1 minute later. Shortly thereafter, outside medical personnel arrived and took over the emergency response, eventually removing Epstein to a local hospital where he was pronounced dead. On August 11th, 2019, the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner performed an autopsy, so the day after, and determined the cause of death was hanging and the manner of death was suicide. Blood toxicology tests did not reveal any medications or illegal substances in Epstein's system. That's weird because according to this, he was on a lot of medications. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy told the OIG that Epstein's injuries were consistent with suicide by hanging. There was no evidence of defensive wounds that would be expected if his death had been a homicide. Epstein did not have marks on his hands, broken fingernails, or debris under them. Contusions to his knuckles that would evidence a fight, or other than an abrasion on his arm, likely due to convulsing from hanging, bruising on his body. So there's an abrasion on his arm. That's weird. Of course, limited video evidence. Recorded video evidence for August 9th and 10th for the SHU area where Epstein was housed was only available from one prison security camera due to a malfunction of the MCC's New York's digital video recorder system that occurred on July 29th. Wow, very recently occurred. While the prison's cameras continued to provide video live feeds, recordings were made for only about half the cameras. MCC New York personnel discovered this failure on August 8th, 2019, but it was not repaired until after Epstein's death. Wow, what a surprise. As detailed in this report, like many other BOP facilities, MCC New York had a history of security camera problems. I mean, of course. The available recorded video footage from one SHU camera captured a large part of the common area. That's the one that they're commonly showing. It's just the stairway leading up to different tiers, not his actual door. So they're validating it and confirming that. Thus, anyone entering or attempting to enter Epstein's SHU tier from the SHU common area would have been picked up by the video camera. Epstein's cell door, however, was not in the camera's field of view. That's right. The OIG reviewed the video and found that between approximately 10 p.m. August 9th and about 6:30 a.m., no one was seen entering Epstein's cell tier from the SHU common area. Guys, this is what happens is they let other inmates out and then they go in and do it, so hey, nobody's coming in. Well, what if it's what if it's an inside job? That's the whole thing. Is some other, like Tartaglione, in my opinion, was assigned to off Epstein and he bungled it or something went wrong. So there's all this reviews, conclusions, and recommendations. And this is it's a 118-page document. This could be a entire episode. I'll try to scan through it, but they did a thorough investigation. It was released in 2023. I mean, here, as discussed in greater detail in the conclusions and recommendations chapter of this report, this is not the first time the OIG has found significant job performance and management failures on the part of BOP personnel and widespread disregard of BOP policies that are designed to ensure that inmates are safe, secure, and in good health. The OIG has investigated numerous allegations related to the falsification of official BOP documentation concerning inmate counts and rounds and has repeatedly found deficiencies with the BOP staffing levels, the custody and care of inmates at risk for suicide, and security camera systems at BOP institutions. The combination of negligence, misconduct, and outright job performance failures documented in this report all contributed to an environment in which arguably one of the most notorious inmates in BOP's custody was provided with the opportunity to take his own life. So that's their conclusion. I mean, they talk about the background, the methodology, the violation of Epstein. He's arrested on July 6th. So, and then I think he was taken to the MCC on July 8th. They investigated 54 witnesses, so they investigated a lot of people. On a separate occasion, this is a footnote, the relative contacted the OIG to say that the relative had photographic proof that the door to Epstein's cell was left open the night he died. When the OIG followed up with the relative to request copies of the photographs and any information, the relative stated that upon further review, the photographs did not show what he had previously communicated. So there's just a lot of stuff in here. I don't know. I mean, they supposedly have 30-minute rounds, so they're supposed to go around 30 minutes. Like literally to check on Epstein's cell, the person who was working that night, Tova Noel, all she had to do was kind of get up and walk like 10 feet, if that. Psychological screening, suicide prevention. Here's the timeline of key events. Talk about the security cameras. The indictment was returned to Epstein on sex trafficking on July 2nd. He was arrested in Teterboro on 6th. He's brought in July 8th. I kind of went over this whole timeline already. Transferred back. They keep asking him, are you suicidal? Not suicidal. Denies suicidal ideation. It is strange that he signed a new testament and will on the August 8th. Timing is really incredible. Maybe he sensed something. The FBI returned to the MCC on August 14th and 15th and seizes additional components of the DVR2 system and the entire DVR1 system. The FBI's Digital Forensics Analysis Unit in Quantico, Virginia, begins to conduct a forensic analysis of the MCC New York's DVR systems and determines that there were catastrophic disk failures in the DVR2 system disk array, and no recordings were available after July 29th, 2019. Very convenient. So all that video evidence you supposedly see is probably not even of the night of the event. I mean, they just go through all this stuff. Yeah. This is like the entrance to the special housing unit. He's in the L tier. He's in the upper tier. You have to go up the stairs. It's like a tiered structure. They show here it's like 2 stories almost, or 2 tiers. These are accurate. I mean, well, this is an interesting statement about Tartaglione. According to the warden, MCC New York typically housed inmates in the SHU with a cellmate. Upon Epstein's initial transfer to the special housing unit, he was assigned a cell in the M tier of the SHU with inmate 1. Warden explained that Epstein was a high-profile inmate, and that he initially selected inmate 1 to be Epstein's cellmate because inmate 1 was another high-profile inmate, and the warden believed inmate 1 to be the least likely SHU inmate to harm Epstein. They were housed together in cell Z05124. Just incredible. That's Tartaglione. So this is an important document that kind of lays out the facts, or according to the Office of Inspector General. And this is how they show. You can see this. I mean, this red dot is literally where Epstein was supposedly with Tartaglione until August 9th. And this little black spot by there, that's where the person was housed. Like literally Tova Noel or one of these other guys, people, was housed right there. So to like check in on him was super easy. This is the cell occupied by him from July 30th to 2019. I think this red thing is this other guy that was put in there that nobody mentioned. But that's a picture of Epstein right there, this black and white. Supposedly modified for privacy reasons, but yeah. That's what the cell looked like. Empty cell inside the door into. So you had to kind of go up the stairs. So this person would sit at this desk, the officer station. That's Tova Noel, which we'll see. And she would just have to go up about a flight of 5 or 6 stairs, go through the gate, and that's where Epstein and Tartaglione were, at least for a while. But like, I mean, reading this into the record, I don't know if that's really worthwhile. But it just shows how much documentation is out because of this. That they did a lot. To my knowledge, this was not disclosed to the public. To my knowledge, I don't, I'm not sure, but I don't think that this was ever divulged. Failure to assign Epstein a new cellmate on August 9th. So I guess so he was alone, according to this thing, on the night of his death, which is, there were no witnesses. So there was a witness before Tartaglione on the 23rd, but he's allowed to make an unmonitored phone call. Failure to conduct SHU inmate counts and staff rounds on August 9th to 10th. So they're not doing it. That's what they said in this document. Like, this is rudimentary. They're supposed to do counts at midnight, 3 a.m., 5 a.m. $4 p.m. count. The OIG's investigation determined that the 4 p.m. SHU inmate count on August 9th was inaccurate because SHU staff did not physically count the inmates as required by BOP policy and relied upon a predetermined number of inmates believed to be in the SHU at the time. So they didn't check. They just said, well, that's what we think was in there. Then at the 10 o'clock count, 2 officers assigned to the SHU were responsible for conducting the 10 p.m. stand-up count. They were Noel and the material handler. They don't seem to want to mention his name. The material handler said he was present at the time of the 10 p.m. count, but that the count was not conducted because everybody was tired. He had worked an overtime shift the earlier night. By the time of the 10 p.m. count, he had worked 22 consecutive hours at the MCC New York. He verified he and Noel signed the 10 p.m. count slip and believed that Noel called the control center with the count numbers. He did not know why the count slip listed 73 plus 1. Who's the plus 1? That's interesting. There's the count slips. They have the count slips. Officer rounds must be conducted every 30 minutes on Epstein as per God. That's what it said with his number. Wow. That's how he supposedly hung himself. And those are all of his medicines are up there, which will show. So there's inconsistencies here. Like they supposedly took a blood draw and found no medicines. This shows that, like, I mean, I've seen this over and over, where the medical examiners just kind of like rubber stamp these people through. I would think that Epstein would get the highest, analysis, considering he's such a high profile client or you know, jail member or whatever. Client isn't the right word. Let's see. So they had other inmates, location of the cells of the other inmates. So there's a guy in inmate 7 and inmate 5 and 6 right across from Epstein. They took their testimony. See you later. I'm going to court, Epstein said. Clinical nurse's memorandum reads that Epstein was cold with circumferential bruising around his neck and posterior modeling, pupils fixed and dilated, no palpable pulses were felt. Items found, convenient thing. I mean, it's all messed up. They go through everything. The availability of limited recorded video evidence due to the security camera recording. So they admit that there's no video evidence, so people are looking for that. It's like not going to happen. Very convenient. This is the one they always show, this angle. They always show this in these things, and that's not the correct angle. That just looks down to the center area of the special housing unit. That's not it. The camera should be facing left of this, shooting down this kind of hallway to see Epstein's cell. So this is the accurate camera, but that's the non-recording camera in the L tier. That's why the public doesn't have this, but we're led to believe this is it. Like I just showed you back in this earlier document when I went through it. When you go through this FBI document, that shows how they didn't know it at the time. No, they should have known it at the time because this is from 2025. This link right here, this goes to the incorrect video monitor. So they're either they don't know the facts or they're deliberately misleading the public, which it's crazy when you think about it. Like, wow, the willful, deception or something. I don't know why this is redacted. Really interesting document if you want to get down to the details of the MCC. Again, I'll let me see if I can find the title of it for people who want to read it. You can also go just download it from justice.gov. Like you can go there. EFTA is EFTA 000390025. The full title is from the Department of Justice, Office of the Inspector General, Investigation and Review of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, Custody, Care, and Supervision of Jeffrey Epstein at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York, New York. Investigative Division, June 2023. So you can just go check it out yourself. It's just a little mini booklet in itself with all of their details, like all the shots here. The camera doesn't work conveniently. BOP's response to the draft report. So they're looking at the Bureau of Prisons is looking at it. And this is the thing from these photos are from what they called the first suicide attempt or possible suicide attempt. It's literally from their DOJ, Federal BOP. but it's pictures of Jeff like he's out of it, like he's drugged or something. This is in the middle of the night. Well, it's like 1:45 in the middle of the night. Tartaglione had come out and said, "Hey, I think he's asleep," and they got him up, and he's just seems to be in a zone. They took pictures of everybody. It's Jeff and his legs. That's Tartaglione. That's him right there in the front. This is him unroided, so he's not like buffed out. Still kind of a big guy, I think. There he is. Cellmate. Summary: on July 23rd, 2019, approximately 1:27 a.m., while making routine rounds inside the special housing unit, staff observed inmate Jeffrey Epstein lying in the fetal position on the floor with a homemade fashion noose around his neck. Epstein was breathing heavily, however, appeared to be responsive. Epstein was directed by staff to stand and submit to restraints. Epstein would not stand on his own and would not comply with staff directives. Staff entered the cell and placed inmate Epstein in both hand and leg restraints. Epstein was searched, metal detected, and placed on a gurney and escorted from the scene without further incident. Epstein was photographed, medically examined, and determined to have sustained a circular line of erythema at the base of the neck and friction marks on the front of the neck and small 2-centimeter erythema on the left knee. Inmate Epstein was placed on suicide watch and all necessary notifications made. There were no staff injuries reported. So there they are, their security levels, facility arrival date. Tartaglione had been in there. He's 51 at the time. He had been in there since January 2018. Ex-law enforcement. So that was it. Dr. Tijuana, 731. Let's see, got a interviewer, Dr. Tijuana, interviewee, Jeffrey Epstein. On July 31st, 2019, at approximately 9 a.m., Epstein was interviewed by the receiving and discharge area. During the interview, Epstein stated he did not have any sleep in approximately 20 days, and he was extremely tired the night he was found on the floor. Epstein stated he got up off his bed at approximately 1:30 to get a drink of water. And all he can recall is being on the floor and hearing someone snoring. That's when he realized the snoring was coming from him. So he got up right around the time of his so-called suicide attempt, according to him. Epstein alleged that his cellmate, Tartaglione Nicholas, was on the floor sleeping at the time. Epstein stated he's never had any issues with Tartaglione, and he is not threatened by him. And he does not want to make up something that isn't there. Additionally, Epstein stated he can recall an incident that occurred 2 days prior when Tartaglione went out to court, and when Tartaglione returned, he was upset. Epstein stated he attempted to talk to Tartaglione, and Tartaglione called him a pedophile. Epstein also stated he knew Tartaglione was upset, and he let him cool off. Epstein stated he does not have any issues with Tartaglione. He feels safe being housed with Tartaglione. Epstein stated he does not feel suicidal. He has a new cellmate whom he gets along with, and he is able to sleep now that he has a CPAP machine. Epstein stated if he remembered any more details, he would reach out to our staff. And then the same person interviews Tartaglione. During the interview, Tartaglione stated he was asleep on the floor inside of his cell. His head was covered with a sheet, and he had his headphones in his ear when he felt something hit his foot. Tartaglione stated when he uncovered his head, he observed Epstein sitting on the floor in the corner with his eyes open. Tartaglione stated he began to call Epstein's name, and when Epstein did not answer, he began to bang on the door for the officer. Tartaglione stated he thought Epstein was having a heart attack because his eyes were open and he appeared to be snoring. Tartaglione stated he does not have any issues being housed with Epstein, although he keeps his conversation to a minimal. Tartaglione stated he does not understand Epstein's motive and what he's trying to do. Tartaglione stated previously during one of their conversations, Epstein made him uncomfortable, and Epstein stated 14 is legal in most states, and I don't understand what's the problem here. Additionally, Tartaglione stated Epstein normally paces the cell and complains about his attorneys not doing their job, and he needs to fire them. Tartaglione stated he does not have any issues being housed with Epstein. However, he does not want to be involved with any plots Epstein has in mind in order to try to get released. So just interesting information there. Let's see. This is another one. This is after the incident, the so-called suicide attempt, which I believe was an attempted murder. On July 23rd, 2019, moments later, I spoke with Officer Blank, who said that inmate Epstein was alert and indicated that his cellmate had attempted to kill him and had been harassing him. He stated the inmate had indicated he'd informed his attorney of his matter. So these are different stories. This is one of the documents. This is Federal Bureau of Prisons, MCC document, where it's a different story, where Epstein's saying, the guy's trying to kill me. I photographed and spoke with inmate Blank, who stated he was asleep with his head, this is Tartaglione, on when he felt something hit his legs. And Jeff, what are you doing? He didn't answer, so he got up, turned on the light, and saw him with a string around his neck. He stated he then called the guards, and then they ran down. On further questioning, Blank stated he sleeps on the bottom bunk, but he gave it to Epstein because he's old. He stated he sleeps on the floor on a mattress. He stated that when he got up, he couldn't remember if he sat up or stood up to check on Epstein. He stated that Epstein was sitting on the floor, leaning to the side with his eyes open, but wasn't responding. He stated the last time he saw him, he was snoring really loud. Inmate Epstein stated he came in from a legal visit at approximately 8 p.m. and staff handed him a copy of the Daily News. Blank was on the floor reading the Daily News. He stated he'd give it to him. He stated that Blank mentioned that he'd been in court all day in Westchester and was carrying on. At that point, inmate Blank paused if he was making the story up as he went along and stated that Blank, he stated, these effing N-word. This place is inhumane. I wish I could report it. Blank officer, that N Hobbit MFer. He then turned to a page in the Daily News that had his picture on it and stated that Epstein was worth $77 million. When asked about his allegations against his cellmate, he stated that he was told if he hurt him, staff wouldn't care. Interesting. So this is the report of the alleged suicide. Access. There's medical assessments. Like there's different stories here. So he told somebody he told that Epstein, that Tartaglione was trying to kill him, and then he supposedly. So some of these might be fake, guys. That's what I'm thinking. Like some of these entries where he felt safe, these are fake. As this whole thing where they were trying to get Epstein to sign something to say that he had suicidal ideation, when he's saying he didn't have suicidal ideation, right? So, like, I think that you can't trust these. Is really my opinion. You can't trust these. These are not consistent. Like, this is a huge red flag. When this document that's for some reason is redacted at this point states that he tried to kill him, and then these other documents sent something different. And there's other evidence of them fudging documents of their rounds and all this other stuff. Like, it's corrupt. So it makes you wonder. I think these are all the rounds and stuff like that, like the calls and record numbers. Very lengthy kind of routing and calls, queue status. This is all part of this one huge document about Tartaglione. It's literally 1,000 pages. It shows how many calls are made and stuff like that. But let's see if we can get down here. I should have edited this out. But it's in the files. It's just like one part of the files. Intake screening record. So this is it. Names and numbers and intake. All these people are coming in. There's Jeffrey Epstein, 7/30/19. Karina Shaliak, that was his girlfriend at the time, so she came to see him at the MCC, it looks like. Let's see. Okay. So then you can go down. Let's see. Let's see which one this is. This is another one, possible suicide attempt. This is L. Anderson, operations lieutenant. Call for assistance at 1:27 a.m. I observed inmate Jeffrey Epstein lying in the fetal position. He was breathing heavily and snoring. I called out to inmate Epstein and observed him flicker his eyes and continue snoring. His neck was red with no abrasions. I observed no further injuries. An attempt was made to get the inmate to stand on his own. When staff made eye contact with him, he would hurriedly shut his eyes. So it seems like he was drugged or something weird was going on. While awaiting the arrival of an inmate companion, inmate Epstein sat on the edge of the bed and began moving forward after he was attempting to fall over head first. When I looked away, he straightened up. As I turned to look at him again, he attempted the same act. I laid him down on the bed and directed him to cease his action or he would be placed in restraints for his safety. At that moment, he stated, "Okay, I won't do it again," and gave a thumbs up. Because of his unpredictable behavior, the decision was made to have a staff member observe inmate Epstein. I left the HA unit in order to make staff notifications. Moments later, I spoke with Officer Clark, who stated that inmate Epstein was alert and had indicated that his cellmate, Nicholas Tartaglione, had attempted to kill him and had been harassing him. He stated the inmate had indicated he'd informed his attorney of this matter. These are multiple things indicate that these are variances, guy. This is something like he's telling one people's stories and then other stories are showing up in different places. And it seems like they're trying to get, in my opinion, trying to get Epstein to sign documents that indicate he's suicidal, but he doesn't want to do it. He's saying the complete opposite. He did have enough money to fake his death. There's no question. But I think that he's telling these guys, "Hey, Tartaglioni's trying to kill me," but he may not have said other things. May not have wanted to let Tartaglione know in the presence of Tartaglione, that he knew something. I photographed and spoke with inmate Tartaglione, who stated he was asleep with his headphones when he felt something hit his legs and said, "Jeff, what are you doing?" He didn't answer. He stated he called the guards. He sleeps on the bottom bunk. Inmate Epstein stated he came from legal visit. Nick was on the floor reading the daily news. He stated he had given it to him. He stated that Tartaglione mentioned that he'd been in court all day in Westchester, was carrying on. And then he said all the stuff that I already repeated. Epstein stated he took his picture, balled it up, and threw it in the garbage. Asked Epstein what happened prior to the staff's arrival. He stated that approximately 1 p.m. he gotten up to get a drink of water, as he gets up every 30 minutes. He remembered walking back to his bunk and waking up with staff there in his cell. Asked if he'd waken up and seen staff, why didn't he respond when we were calling out to him? He stated he only remembered hearing himself making noise like snoring. So there's like amnesia. He's missing something. He's either knocked out or drugged or fell asleep. When asked about the allegations against his cellmate, he stated if he was told if he heard them, staff wouldn't care. Duty medical, Dr. Bourdoin, was notified and briefed. It was determined no further medical attention was needed. Upon the arrival of medical staff, inmate Epstein was examined and treated by MOP Joaquin for a circular line erythema at the base of his neck, one section on the front with marks of friction, and a small erythema on his left knee. So there's all this stuff like he was breathing and unresponsive. So there's multiple stories like people who were on there. This is one from a guy, Masulo. This is Silva. I secured Tartaglione in the bathroom while Officer Masulo provided assistance. And this is Clark. This seems to be a cop. SOSD Clark. While observing inmate Epstein, he sat up on the bed and began telling me he thinks that his bunkie Tartaglione tried to kill him. So he said other people are saying this information. Inmate Epstein also stated his bunkie also tried to extort money from him and stated if he didn't pay him, he would beat him up. He stated that this has been going on for a week. He asked inmate Epstein if he told staff about this, and he told me no. He'd only told his lawyer. He went on to say his bunkie told him that if you beat him up because of his charges, the officers would not report it. Because of this, he was not comfortable telling the officers about the prolonged threats and alleged attempts to extort him. So he's telling phony stories because they won't believe him. So like I immediately reported this to the lieutenant. So it's different stories. Epstein is telling the cops a different story because he doesn't think he'll get sympathy from the guys in jail, which is probably true because they don't like pedophiles. Let's see. Wow. So Epstein is telling the cops a different story. These things have never been made public, guys. Not to my knowledge. Put him in a suicide smock. And it's just a weird kind of like drugged out placidity about him. Like, why isn't he in a panic? It's because he doesn't seem to know or got knocked out or something. I don't even know. But they did take a lot of records during the 723 event. There's no question about it. You got investigator, captain, associate warden, and the warden is Lamine Indea. There they are together. Jeff Epstein, 66, Tartaglione. Some of these are definitely redundant. There's the report of incident. Jeffrey Epstein. Form 583 seems to be some internal memorandum document about the suicide attempt. There it is. Official use only, law enforcement sensitive. Description of this. He's viewed. This is kind of redundant. But the story of what's going on, this is not stuff. The suicide is what came out to the public. This is what's important about this. The suicide report came out at 7:23. Internally, he's telling the cops, my roommate's Tartaglione is trying to kill me. And he's not going to tell the people in jail. So the cops are different than the people in jail. He doesn't, because in my opinion, Epstein thinks he's not going to get any sympathy from the people who work at the jail. I think that this is super important stuff. So there's evidence, in my opinion, that they're changing records and getting different stories. There's contradictions in stories, which are really enormously important to understand. Maybe Epstein felt comfortable telling him more of the truth. Jails are there's a lot of strange things that go on in there. Like they're confined environments. And sometimes the people who are in jail have strange relationships with their jailers, like personal or favorites or strange things, No deformities, circular line reaching 2/3 of the neck circumference, 2 inches wide. So many there's just so much evidentiary pictures and stuff over and over again. So that's kind of 723. What's this one? Legal calls. I mean, they took it seriously. They just tons of documents about it. I need to edit this document. It's way too long. It's just a lot of extraneous information on this. There's one document about this that's like 1,000 pages long. It's really something else. Daily lieutenant's log. So they have all the logs from them. Okay, what's this one? This is an article about one of his Tartaglioni's accomplices. Jason Sullivan, this is from the Yonkers Ledger. Jason Sullivan, accomplice of former Yonkers police officer Nicholas Tartaglioni, has been sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. Sullivan's testimony played a pivotal role in the conviction of Tartaglioni for the murders of Martin Luna and 3 others. The events unfolded in April 2016 when Jason Sullivan lured Martin Luna to Liquid Lounge in Chester, New York. Sullivan, Luna's employer, set up the meeting under the pretext of Luna providing an estimate for a construction job. But really, this meeting involved a dispute concerning the illegal drug ring both men were engaged in with Nicholas Tartaglioni. At the time, Sullivan had left New York and moved to Florida. He entrusted his construction business to Martin Luna and also allowed Luna to store drugs in his vacant home. Luna would acquire the drugs in Texas, then transport them to New York. Most of the funding for this operation was supplied by Tartaglioni. However, Luna became the target of Tartaglioni after claiming he was ripped off by his Texas suppliers. Sullivan then collaborated with Tartaglioni in the plan to entrap Luna at a bar. Martin Luna, his nephew Miguel Luna, his niece's husband Urbano Santiago, and friend Hector Gutierrez arrived at the bar to Tartaglioni lying in wait. There, Tartaglioni strangled Luna to death with a zip tie. The other 3 men were shot in the head. Authorities arrested Tartaglioni in December, 8 months after the killings. With cooperation of Tartaglioni's accomplices like Marcos Cruz and Jason Sullivan, the victims' bodies were recovered and Tartaglioni was convicted. Sullivan pleaded guilty to the drug and kidnapping conspiracy, but claimed he had no direct part in the killings. Despite a recommended sentence of 30 years to life, Sullivan received a 10-year sentence. At this time, when this was published in 2023, Tartaglioni hadn't been sentenced yet. So all this stuff, he was sentenced in 2024. So that's just kind of an interesting. This is also interesting too. Like when he was suicided, there's an external consultant review done 1 month after Jeffrey died. And what kind of drugs did he take? Docusate sodium, milk of magnesia, methylprednisolone. I don't even know what that is. Omega-3, people take that, and insulin. Regular insulin subcutaneously per sliding scale each morning. So he's on insulin. What's prednisolone? Is that what is that? I don't know. But he definitely was taking drugs. I mean, that's according to this external consultant review with a signature. This is the weird one. This is like after he died. You can see this thing. This is like there's some guy, Efrain Reyes, who was his cellmate. But why isn't that mentioned anywhere? It says these documents aren't consistent, guys. There's so many inconsistencies because he says he's alone from the 9th to the 10th, but then this guy Efrain Reyes shows up as his inmate buddy in this, right? So are they deliberately fudging these? Are they negligent? Why are there different stories at different times? Very important. And there's Efrain Reyes right there. Why does that one important? I mean, the one important camera where Jeffrey's in doesn't work. That's probably the most high-profile person who's been at the MCC. This is also people were following up after this. So some independent third-party attorneys. This is from the documents as EFTA 000169007. They're trying to follow up with like disclosure materials. This is Bruce Barkett, Esquire. So I think that's important. This is the other prostate. Medical examiner studies Epstein courts noted on a large prostate. It's from Dissident Media. And then he said he had there's no evidence in his, like, that I saw in his emails that he had this kind of radical prostatectomy, but it seems to be in there. Like, this is the woman here who was over. This is Tova Noel. She was literally like prosecuted by the United States of America. And then there was like a deferred prosecution. There's also this is what's from the files, I think. Like, after a new officer comes at 12, she turns fan and blocked out the noise, dozed off, woke back up, food cart punched in to hear breathe, breathe. Then they were walking through breakfast. Dude said, "You killed that dude." She said, "If he's dead, we're going to cover it up. And he's going to have an alibi, my officer." The whole tier heard that. It literally says, this is from the Epstein files. Then found out and knew that Jeffrey Epstein died. Officers kept saying, "I didn't kill him." When people came through, inmates said, "Miss Noel killed Jeffrey." So there's like some more discrepancy. Megan Kellen, this is from March 10th, 2026. Megan Kelly, a total of 12 deposits have been received, culminating the largest one, $5,000, 11 days before Epstein died. Here's what this is to this woman right here, Tova Noel. Here's what's really weird. He didn't start working in the special house. She didn't start working until July 7th, weeks before his death. That's when Epstein showed up. Megan breaks down the bombshell revelation that Epstein's prison guard Googled him and made mysterious cash deposits prior to his death. Methylprednisone is an anti-inflammatory. Great, thank you. November 14th, 2019, like, they prosecuted these two people. I think Michael Thomas was the other person at the special housing unit. They did it right away. So Epstein dies in August, and within 3 months. Overview of the investigation: interviewed more than 27 MCC employees, 16 inmates at MCC, hundreds of hours of video. It's useless. Subpoena and interviews hundreds of records. The MCC, this is EFT. If you want to look, you can go check out all this stuff. But this is a grand jury exhibit. EFTA 02731790. The MCC is a federal administrative detention facility located in Manhattan, as run by the FBI, or FBP, excuse me, BOP, Federal Bureau of Prisons. MCC is one of several facilities used to house inmates who have been charged with federal crimes in the Southern District of New York and are awaiting trial. The MCC employs correctional officers whose primary duty is to ensure the care, custody, and control of the inmate population of the MCC. Tova Noel, the defendant, has been employed as a correctional officer at the MCC since approximately 2016. As of August 2019, Noel's primary assignment was the SHU. So that's the special housing unit within the MCC. On August 9th, Noel worked a regular shift from 4 to 12 a.m. and then worked overtime from 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. So she worked almost 16 hours. The prior day, she had worked a regular shift from 12 to 8 p.m. in the SHU on the 8th. Michael Thomas, the defendant, has been employed as a correctional officer at the MCC since approximately 2007. Beginning in 2013, he was assigned to work as a materials handler supervisor, although he regularly worked overtime shifts as a correctional officer. He worked an overtime shift on August 10th from 12 to 8 a.m. The prior day, he was on leave and worked an overtime shift on August 9th from 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. Epstein was incarcerated at the MCC between his arrest on July 6th and his so-called suicide on August 10th. There's all the kind of information. There's the desk. There's the stairs leading up. Count policies. Count slip for the night, 810. Institutional count. This is obviously the angle that doesn't show Jeff's door. 30-minute round policies. That's from the night before, 8/9/2019. 23 apparent suicide attempt. So they're documenting this in this some kind of internal review or litigation against Tova Noel. That's Epstein's cell. I've seen picture of that 12 a.m. count. In reliance on that falsified count slip at approximately 12:48 a.m., 49 a.m., the control center cleared the 12 a.m. account. Noel and Thomas did not complete the 12 a.m. count. Nonetheless, Noel and Thomas completed a signed count slip for the 12 a.m. count that falsely stated that the institutional count had been completed. Noel and Thomas, the defendants, were additionally responsible for conducting the 3 a.m. institutional counts. As confirmed by video from the MCC's internal video surveillance system, Noel and Thomas did not complete either the 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. counts. So they didn't do any counts from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. That's a huge red flag. During the night, instead of completing the required counts and rounds, Tova Noel, Michael Thomas, the defendants, were seated at the correctional officer's desk in the SHU common area, using the computers and moving around the SHU common area. For an approximately 2-hour period, they sat at their desk without moving and appeared to be asleep. Noel used the computer periodically throughout the night, including to search the internet for furniture sales and benefit websites. Thomas used the computer briefly around 1 a.m., 4 a.m., and 6 a.m. to search for motorcycle sales and sports news. Shortly after 6 a.m., Thomas and Noel received a delivery of breakfast carts into the SHU, after which time they were again the only officers in the SHU. Shortly after 6 a.m., Noel and Thomas walked up and entered the tier to which Epstein was housed to serve breakfast. Approximately 6:33, the alarm was activated. Epstein was alone in his cell and not responsive, with a noose around his neck. These are the things that came in. This is an electronic communication, FBI. Right to request the opening of grand jury subfile for grand jury information required during this investigation. They looked into 4chan. Somebody said something strange on 4chan, so there were records requested about this. So the FBI requested something from 4chan, which is wild. And then Apple, September 19th, 2019. Trying to, get as much information. AT&T info. AT&T records key. Trying to get as much information as possible. Receipts. Strange checks. I don't know who those are to. Let's see. Maybe we could watch some video. Just shows how much documentation there is in all this stuff. It really is incredible. There was also a court case. I think the New York Times was trying to get information about this case, and they sued for information. Let's see. trying to get information out of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. There's a document in there from September 2020. Just trying to figure out a lot of that stuff. Really interesting. I mean, I should probably go back through and take all that stuff out. But I think really what we can do is kind of go through some of these movies that these guys are saying, hey, this isn't it. So these are two former mobsters. One is Francese, who's around. I've seen him on a lot of stuff. Another guy was an enforcer named Elite, John Elite, and I'll play some of his stuff right here. I mean, these guys both have the same take that something suspicious was going on at the MCC.
Spending time at MCC, Epstein was there, right? Here, we're going to talk about Epstein. I know it's a very hot topic. You know, I want to start off by saying, what is MCC in New York? Explain to everybody, all the viewers, what is MCC?
MCC, I spent 4.5 years there, is a holding facility for guys around the country, and that's facing federal charges in different jurisdictions. Some of them are moved there, some of them are state inmates waiting federal charges. So it's a holdover facility before you get to a designation after you're sentenced if you lose your case.
You know, spending time at MCC, Epstein was there, right? So walk us through, once he gets arrested and he gets to MCC, walk us through what happens.
So when you first get to MCC, like most facilities, you go through intake. And in intake, they'll take pictures, fingerprint you, designate what floor you're going to go to, why you're going to go there, and set a file for you. And he's a high-profile inmate. So he's probably the highest profile inmate in the country at the time. So he'll go where, we went to. And that was the 10th floor. The 10th floor is where they put terrorists, they put top gangsters, they put people that are very, very high profile, dangerous, and well known. Guys like Madoff probably were up there, I would think, even though it's a money crime, because of how big his notoriety was. Epstein was on 10 because of same thing, and guys like us are up there on 10.
So that's just interesting. Here he is talking about his prison death.
Murder.
You know, if parts of the system were down or doctored, is it still possible that someone slipped in, or would other security measures have caught that?
Oh, they never slip in. I could give you different scenarios what happened, in my opinion. And these are, I would think, of pretty accurate. The two guards that were working on duty were CIA operatives. They weren't guards. They look at the schedule's up, they put two fake names up there. They were actually working the tier. So they work the tier. People go to sleep at certain hours for the most part, and they walk into his cell and they kill him when they feel like it. They turn the camera off. They turn it off 45 seconds, 1 minute, whatever long they think that's going to take them to maneuver that body and to kill him. That's one scenario of it. Second scenario is at chow time at 4:30 or earlier. They could have gave him a dose of something to put him out, and then the second time, but for dinner time, they gave him something else.
See, that's what I think happened the first time, 723. He's dosed with something because that's why he asks. He doesn't remember stuff, and that's why he asks so dazed.
Knocked him out, went into the cell, and they killed him easily without any kind of struggle. Third thing is they came to his cell because these are routine things. They tell him inmate something or other, whatever his number is, Epstein, turn around. When you get cuffed up, you put your hands out behind your back into the mail slot. They cuff you. So if there's any marks on your hands, there are always marks on your head because we're always cuffed. So that's not going to be suspicious for autopsy. Once he does that, they kill him and take the cuffs off him and lay him back down, go back out, turn the cameras back on, and they leave the unit. And so the time they said they were sleeping is actually when they left, and then the next duty officers come on at whatever hour, 5 minutes.
Right. So I just showed you, according to the own internal investigation, there were no rounds or faked rounds from midnight to 5, which is a 5-hour period, but you have to also account for before that and after. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of time, especially, and we know by their own admission that one camera that oversaw the hallway looking over Epstein's jail cell was non-functional from what a strange time, July 29th, right? So it's after the first so-called suicide attempt.
Later, 2 minutes later, and they walk in and they find the guy dead. That to me is more of the scenario that happened. And lastly, they could have brought in 2 inmates to say they were inmates, but they're really operatives. They're in another cell, and they give them keys. They walk out of their cell when they think the time is right. They go in and they kill them. There's a lot of scenarios could have happened if it was done by the CIA, which I believe it was.
Yeah, he doesn't believe Bill Barr. There's another video. I'll see if I can find it. HGG asked, do you think Epstein is in Vail, Colorado? No, there's a guy by the name of Richard Epstein that people they just saw the same last name and go, oh, Jeff is in Colorado. No, the guy's name that they were talking to in Colorado, his name was Richard Epstein. So that's a false lead. I got one more about this guy, Elite. He's an interesting guy, just listening to him himself. Like, he's got an interesting background.
Based on what you know, was Epstein's death suicide by hanging even physically possible? You served time in there. Do you think that's possible?
Suicide, the suicides are random, but not in his situation, not with the cameras. There's too many variables that it was impossible for him to kill himself. Between the cameras, between the high profile, there was too many things that happened that would just never happen. Like what I just said. So he was murdered. That's for sure.
Okay, and this is Francisi. These guys are both actually really interesting. Their interviews are just their lives, and these guys would probably know more than me what really goes on. I think both of them were housed in the MCC. That's why they know it.
There's no way for us really to put pressure on people to find accountability. What's your thoughts on that with Epstein? I will tell you this before you answer that. I was on the exact same tier, in the exact same cell block that Epstein was. There's no way, in my estimation, that guy committed suicide. No way. Cameras don't go out all at once. People don't stop walking the tier. I mean, there was times there, the toilet is right there in the open. You don't even want to go to the toilet because people are going back and forth all the time. And there's no method in there to commit suicide, to hang yourself like he did. You couldn't do it. You just couldn't do it. There's no way for us.
Yeah, so that's another one. I mean, this guy, Francis has made many statements about Epstein. Let me see if I can find this other one. The audio on that last one wasn't very good, sorry. But he talks about JFK. This is for him.
Down one way.
That oath, I wanted to be.
Yeah, I want to see him.
Just look at things differently. They don't care who's. It was a defining moment in my life.
Francisi was a ruthless mobster.
It sounded right. Yeah.
In the 80s.
I saw a lot of guys that not do well, and I don't demean them for it. I get it. Myself in that cell.
So you reckon he was killed?
I get it. I'm totally against it for young people. It'll destroy them emotionally. But I got through it. It was hard, honestly.
You were in the same prison as Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
What do you think happened?
Jeffrey Epstein would have to be a magician to try to hang himself in that cell. I was in that cell. There's no way there's nothing on the ceiling. Yeah. The bedpost is this high. I couldn't even go to a restroom without them walking back and forth and having me on camera. There's no way he committed suicide.
So you reckon he was killed?
Yeah,
Why?
I believe that. I mean, look, there's no doubt there was powerful people involved with him, 100%. These people have a way of covering things up.
So that's Elite and Epstein. And let's see if we can figure this out. That's it, guys. I mean, I don't know how many more of these I should go through, but like I think I kind of covered it. There's tons of discrepancies. There's tons of new information. I don't think that was in the public. But there's tons of discrepancies in their own documents. And their own investigation showed somebody was not there for like 5 hours. And that Epstein told the cops one different story and told them the jailers another story. And I went over that pretty much in detail, that he told the cops Tartaglioni's trying to kill me. But then he told the other people, oh, he's fine. Everything's okay. And it's pretty clear in some other records that Tartaglioni was antagonizing Epstein, calling him a pedophile and stuff like that, and intimidating him. So I think all in all, this whole story, like he got out. There's actually another one. I don't know where that file is. I don't know what to do with it, but like that he was switched out. Somebody made this element that he might have been switched out on the way out. But like somebody else accused that girl Tove of being involved. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that. But where's the I don't know. There's definitely one. I can't find that document. I don't know what. Oh, here it is. It's EFTA. I don't know why. Let's see. This is the one switched out. I think I just went over it too fast. This is from their documents on the day of the murder. And not saying anything after this, please do not dox me. The last night after the 415 count, there was no 415 count. They lied about the count. So they took him in a medical in a wheelchair. So this doesn't jive with some of what they found out. Next thing we know, a trip van shows up. We do not do releases on the weekends or Saturday morning. Next thing we know, we put a single man cell, hangs himself. Here's the thing. The trip van did not sign in, and we did not record the plate number. And a guy in a green dress, military outfit, was in the back of the van, according to the tower guy who let him through the gate. You guys, I'm shaking right now, but I think they switched him out. That's EFTA 00133-351. And that's some kind of thing that came in the 12th on 19. I just scanned over that accidentally. But yeah, thanks for listening. That's a long presentation, but the documents are out there. And yeah, so I think I'll do something about the FBI files next, just to give people an idea of what went on with those, because there's so much incoming. Like I just stated that at the intro, when they came through, they had that 1-800-FBI number, and it created a blizzard of information that the FBI, to my knowledge, never followed through on. But there were a lot of people talking about Epstein and giving information to them about Epstein, which indicates even a larger cover-up than even people realize. Anyway, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. You can find this out. I'll put the PDF up on my Patreon. So you can go to William Ramsey Investigates on Patreon. You can watch all my shows ad-free on Patreon. And my website, you can buy my books. I've got 5 books. And I've done a lot of shows on Epstein files. So you can check those out at my podcast. If you're listening to this on YouTube, I have a podcast with about 1,600, 1,700 episodes going all the way back. You can find that on Spreaker, Spotify, etc. William Ramsey Investigates. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.